the antidote for that is, when you can, it is to pause when you're feeling those feelings come up in you, those kind of tribal feelings like, I can't listen to this other person. I wonder what the story is behind where that person came from and how their point of view evolved over time and what it really means to them and where they're at. That's what the tools are that people use to try to bridge the gap and find some area of common ground.
Welcome to the People Fuss Podcast, everybody. My name is Doug Daniels.
And I'm Carrie Prince.
And we are here to discuss
the fuss
about people.
Unpacking the news and headlines and stories around human connection and disconnection in life, in love, and in leadership.
That's right. The fuss today is about the current state of critical thinking, or lack thereof, in how we relate to others and whether or not we even care enough to think about that stuff at all. Especially online. While screens used to represent professionals with skills that we trusted to have some sort of reliability with information or expertise, you think of the Dan Rather era of the national news, today's information world is the wild west of persuasion and personality and now AI slop, with an end goal of social media market share, not a more informed public. So, Carrie Prince, who the fuss do we have with us today?
Someone perfect to talk about this topic. In fact, someone very inspired by this topic. My friend and peer executive coach, Josh Gibson, is with us today. He has a really stellar background. So he did practice psychiatry for over 10 years. He's worked in healthcare tech and change management. He's advised startups. He's done a whole lot of cool stuff, and he generally always makes me think deeper or think in a more complex way, especially about issues relating to human connection. That is something he knows a whole lot about. We are so lucky to have him because I seriously treasure his insights, and I'm lucky enough to meet him about once a month, but we are happy to have him as a guest on our show. Josh Gibson, hello, how are you?
Welcome, Josh.
Thanks so much for that very kind introduction. I'm flattered, and it's great to be here. I love what you guys are doing. I'm a regular listener, so I probably won't listen to this one though because I don't want to hear myself.
Trust me, you get used to the sound of your own voice. I didn't think I would, but you kind of have to.
You've got a great voice.
Oh, thanks, Josh.
Not now, but go back to where you were, and I think we're in a sweet spot.
That's his nerd voice. He shifts it a nerd voice quite a bit, I would say.
Quite easily.
Proud nerds over here. I think Josh Gibson was one of the first people after we launched to be like, you guys are going to do well with the nerds. And I was like, thank you.
Actually, dear listeners, it was Josh himself who suggested that I be a co-host. So
that's right.
If you like me, then you should say thank you to Josh. If you don't like me, you have Josh to blame. And me, I guess, in a way. I don't know.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, Josh, why is the topic of critical thinking and the decay of critical thinking, I think as you would put it, why is this kind of close to your heart?
Well, I'm an older person, so I'm just cantankerous about things not being the way that they used to be. Actually, for me, this all began, I had a 12th grade AP English teacher named Everett Reese, who's passed away quite a while ago. But he gave us a book in our senior year of English called Thought and Statement, which I have a copy of right here. I'm selling.
Of course.
Oh, okay.
I would never sell this book. It really like laid out sort of the core pieces of thinking, like observation, inference, assumptions, pitfalls of your thought process. That the first section in the book is literally called Problems of Straight Thinking. And it then goes on to talk about how do you express an argument, how do you write. So it's really an English composition book, but you got to think before you can write, and writing is, the way writing and speaking is how we express our points of view and make these arguments, and hopefully try to show where we are and get other people to want to join us, or they show us an opinion or an argument and we want to join them too. So it talks about how when you're making deductions, are you building up from the base of the pyramid, which was not the gesture I just made, or are you doing it in an inverted way, and you're then making a ton of assumptions potentially about where you are? So it had stuff in there like how can you teach people to be better observers? Can you teach people to be better witnesses? Can you do anything like that? So that sort of set things going for me as a thinker and writer, and it led to a disastrous decision to take a formal logic class in college, which was really symbolic logic, which was really not what I thought I was getting into. But I should have read the syllabus more closely. It's my error. The second piece of it is the single. When I was a management consultant and I went to med school, the single most impactful paper I read in medical school had nothing to do with the human body. It was a paper called Judgment Under Uncertainty, Heuristics and Biases. And it was by Daniel Kahneman, who I know you guys have heard of, and Amos First. So that made me really, really think about thinking. And I think that's probably part of why I wound up becoming a psychiatrist, because I never thought I'd be a psychiatrist. I think most of them are weirdos, and I had, not the greatest exposure early on. They're not all weirdos, but a lot of them are kind of weirdos.
This is why we like you. This is why I like you. Tell it how it is, Josh.
I tell it how I think it is. It might not be how it is for everybody, right?
You have more space to speak about it, having been one.
Well, that's true. That is fair. But that paper really laid out to me like why we make mistakes, and it's really important to consider yourself a very imperfect information processor. And no offense to you guys as podcasters or all of the podcasters out there, but you're all fallible. We're all fallible, and we're saying these things and expressing our opinions, right?
Oh my God. How dare you? How dare you, Josh?
I'm sorry.
I guess it's true. I guess it's true.
Josh, there's something so interesting about that being an important piece for you, because a lot of times I think many people have misunderstandings, especially about people with medical degrees and in the medical field, and how much they feel they know, or they're right, or they have the answers. And most of the people I know that are doctors in different ways are like you, where they more often impress upon everyone how uncertain things are. Does that feel right at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're when the culture of medicine still is really about facts, right, versus beliefs, and so both are important, but facts really engage what Kahneman called system two, right, the lazy, more repetitive. I got to dig into this and really look at what's going on and try to fight against my biases, right? There's the core one really is like what you see is all there is, and we grab the facts of what we see now. It's a little bit like that joke. I feel like the only other podcast I was on, I told a bad joke too, so I'm going to try it again here.
2 for 2.
Maybe I guess it's just a quirk or a habit. It's part of my personality. So there's a good Samaritan. He's heading towards a bar at night, and he's walking up the street, and he notices there's a man crawling around underneath the streetlight on all fours. And he's a good Samaritan, so he can't help himself. He walks up, he says, "Hey, what's going on?" And the guy says, "I lost my keys." And the Samaritan says, "Gosh, I'll help you look for it." So he and the man are both down there crawling around on their hands and knees. It's not a woman, because a woman would be way too smart to be crawling around on her hands and knees looking for the keys, I think. But anyway, these two guys are doing it. They've gone through the whole area. It's been like 15 minutes. And the Samaritan says, "Geez, man, I really don't think your keys are here. Are you sure this is where you lost them?" And the guy says, "No, I lost them up the street." He said, "Well, why have we been looking here?" And the man says, "This is where the light is." And our brains work that way. We look where the light is, and we are lazy. We are not people who think about what are the alternate explanations, what else could be going on. We love to jump to a conclusion. We love that feeling of certainty. So here I'm going to diverge into a quick story. So when I first moved to San Francisco to take my consulting job, I actually lived at my dad's house because I didn't have enough money. But then when I had enough money to get an apartment, my friend Steve happened to be visiting. He was actually in medical school. And we went to go look for an apartment together. And we found a place, walked in, and the woman who's the agent is super nice. And she's like, oh, so you guys are looking for a place. And we were looking for a place in one way, but we weren't actually looking for a place in the way that she clearly meant it. She had made an assumption about two young men looking for an apartment together, meaning they must,
In San Francisco, no
Right.
less.
yeah, being in a relationship together. And we were, but we were just friends. I mean, I swear we were just friends. So that whole process, that's a simple example of someone making an assumption. Seems like it might be a reasonable assumption. I mean, I'm in touch with my feminine side. I got a little bit of a list, but you could make more of a case even, right? But that didn't quite, add up to be true. And I have other stories about that apartment building, and there are other examples of like how people's brains jump to conclusions rather than really sorting out what could be going on. What are the other things that are not in the light that we need to try to understand? But I don't want to bore you with that right now.
Yes, I'm just so bored with your stories about heuristics and thinking. No, knowing that we are lazy, fallible, make mistakes, that we can be wrong. I mean, yes, there is some association with what it feels like to be wrong. I think this is something I can immediately feel hot shame when I think I did something wrong. This has happened with the podcast for sure, where something gets put out there and somebody messages me saying, hey, this thing that you put out, I think you're wrong. And I immediately have that feeling of like, failure and all those things. So luckily there's some sort of, even a mechanism after someone points it out, but to try and be right ahead of time is also really tricky. And so like when you're trying to do the best you can to be right, like leading up to these things, Josh, what does it kind of look like to have good critical thinking in these spheres that we're talking so much about, like leadership, like relationships? And then you had mentioned followership, which I think is a really big one now with how much people find their online gurus and stuff. So what do you think good critical thinking looks like in those spaces?
Well, I think they're all slightly different spaces. They're different roles that we're playing, right? As a leader, as a follower, or as a person. I think that the main thing you have to do is slow down and not make an assumption that your brain is right. It's really, I think the hardest thing in coaching for me is getting people who are smart to realize that they're not so smart. That's the real challenge. So
Dunning-Kruger effect, I guess, right?
Well, of a sort, yeah. I think that we do all overestimate our likelihood of being right. Me included. I'm no different than anybody else. But I do try to spend more time thinking about those areas that are outside the light, where I don't see what's there, right? Where I'm considering other stories. And I think that I'm not answering your question very well, but I'm going to let go of paying attention to my process right now because I'm a guest on a podcast.
Yeah,
And
you are.
but I think that, so a very topical thing for this is, what happened with Renee Good, right, in Minneapolis. And that's a fundamental, terrible thing and a tragedy and an awful thing that she lost her life as a result of that whole situation. But the problem for me, and other people have described it, is that there's an immediate rush to say what happened. And we were not there. I was not there. You were not there. So to me, it's asking the questions about what the whole situation is before you really come to a conclusion. And that's a key piece, I think, in being just a good human, and a key piece in being a thoughtful human, and a key piece in not propagating misinformation, not succumbing to groupthink, not just following these beliefs, right? The belief-oriented people that we are, we're wired for that as mammals, right? We're tribal. We're wired to follow beliefs and be together. The core difference between a fact and a belief is, to me at least, is that a fact is system 2, a belief is really system 1. We go with something because it has an intrinsic emotional value for us. We kind of act on that. So a key piece to all this is kind of decoding what's my emotion pushing me to a place? or am I really looking at all of the facts? And we're going to have both because we're wired for it. I have beliefs and I try to balance those out with facts.
Yeah, and going back to the mammal brain, one of the things about making assumptions that we as humans do, we're pattern-seeking mammals, as some people like to point out. And there is a reason behind our brain chemistry needing to make those kinds, seeing those patterns and making an assumption, right? That is the basis of that lady's assumption. She sees a lot of young men together looking for apartments in San Francisco that happen to be gay. That's a pattern, so I'm going to make an assumption about these two guys that are gay. Now, obviously, this is not a survival mechanism at this point, but in the past, last time I saw Kevin got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger that came out of grass that looked just like that. So I'm going to stay the hell away from that grass. Those kinds of assumptions, assuming that there's a saber-toothed tiger behind the grass, that's a good assumption to make. And I think so much of what it means to be a modern human, say, is to find ways to disconnect or slow down that mammal lizard brain that we have that is so quick to make those assumptions or to try and find patterns that don't necessarily exist, because we're supposedly higher thinkers these days. But I wanted to kind of you brought up Renee Good and it's very apropos because one of the things that I think both sides of any issue would claim that the other side is lacking critical thinking. And how do you think that sort of lack of critical thinking on one side or the other relates to like the online news landscape or who our trusted sources are, or how can we kind of overcome those sorts of I guess mistrust in that the other person, the other side is never thinking critically, I'm the one thinking critically, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That is a huge challenge because, again, we are in those moments affiliating with our tribes and backing up or following the leader of the tribe who gets up there and says X. And so, well, I believe Christine Ohm and I trust what she says. So that's what it is. Or Gavin Newsom or whoever's making a comment about whatever. It's a vexing situation. I don't think there's a simpler, easy answer, but it boils down to you have to listen to people emotionally and create a sense of safety before they will be changed by a piece of information. And instead, you have two tribes split apart who are arguing about what they think the facts are, and sometimes they are the facts, but that's not the way you persuade or influence anybody. And it's a much more receptive process unless you are in power. If you're in power, you can say, you're going to the bathroom right now because your feet are dirty. You could say that to your child when they come in from outside. You're in charge. But as adults, people are in charge of us. Let's not pretend. But those people aren't the ones who are usually telling us what to do. And we can make our own opinions and form our own judgments, but we're going to do that with the eye towards, like, are we connected in a group? Your sense of shame, Carrie, that you were describing earlier I've never heard you make a single error on this podcast, by the way, but if you
no,
say
actually you have, the pronunciation of a medical word.
That's right.
We grossly mispronounced, and you have it down. In fact, you probably remember the word. We don't even remember it.
Oh my God, anosognosia.
Yeah, what was it? Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
It's pronounced anosognosia, I think.
Anosognosia.
Yeah, the condition of not knowing that you're losing your mind, sort of.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I remember the
You
definition.
thought it was anosognosia.
Anosognosia.
Yeah.
That sounds better, frankly, Josh. I don't know.
I actually have a recipe for anaxosia that I'd like to send you. It's perfect.
You throw a little Italian on there, anosognosia.
Hey, a little Parmigiano.
Yeah.
You got it.
Oh, the shame. Yeah. So when you feel shame, that's another social emotion. Like as animals, we're what shame is like shame is supposed to tell you when you violated the social contract of your tribe. So if we were a tribe and I have done something to, take something that's yours, or like your sandwich is what I usually tell people when I'm on a video call. If I could reach across the screen and take your sandwich, I've taken something that's yours, it's your food, that's wrong. I should show you shame. I should break eye contact. I should like slump my shoulders. I should be, not a threat. And you should then pull me back into the tribe and be like, hey, it's okay. You want to, like, when I see people who show shame, I want to give them a hug. I want to pull them back into the group. But that's not the way we respond with this stuff these days. If someone shows shame on the other side, we're like, well, let's go get them. Let's go pile on. And so the norms of how we talk about things, this is you can't have a fact-based argument if there isn't anymore a sense of truth in the world. And right now, if you look at what's happening, you guys mentioned, the news people don't even trust. They don't trust the news. There isn't still a standard of what fact checking is. I try to read all kinds of things so I see different opinions and can find different facts. I totally bought I had no idea what I was buying. This is like taking the formal logic class instead of like a rhetoric class in college. I signed up for the free press and I thought it was going to be like news. And what the free press is just, as far as I can tell, maybe we'll get some hate from free press listeners. It's just a bunch of opinions. And I don't need a ton more opinions. I'm looking for actual facts because that's kind of how that's what I'm seeking. Everybody's got a freaking opinion. I don't need a lot of opinions. I guess I could argue we're selling you informed opinions, but I don't really have any way to vet how informed they are.
Right.
So it's challenging to not get caught in the slop of regular news, opinion, or life. And that's what all these things have blurred. And it used to be that there was a real difference. Cantankerous Josh coming out. There was like a difference between like fact and opinion on TV and in the newspaper. And it was really clear. And I think that it's not that clear anymore. From whatever side you sit, it doesn't feel that clear.
Well, yeah, and didn't Fox News lose $1 billion lawsuit? And in part of their defense, they said that no reasonable person would watch our stuff and think it was news. It's entertainment.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, I think about journalism a lot and how weird it is that people have decided, many people have decided that traditional news journalists are not to be trusted, but somehow they completely trust the judgment and character of Joe Schmo on the street filming and posting it on Reddit or whatever. It's like there was this sudden trust in your quote, street neighbor to tell the truth. And, mistrust in people that have studied a little bit, hopefully, and are supposed to operate within some sort of framework of ethics. Do you have any feelings about that shift?
What do you think?
I mean,
I definitely have feelings.
you started off by saying I'm old and I'm cantankerous. Do you mourn for the Dan Rather days a little bit?
I never trusted Dan Rather. What's the frequency,
Really?
Kenneth? What was that? He was on drugs his entire. I'm just joking. Please don't sue the estate of Dan Rather. What I really missed, going back to Shawnee Mission East High School. So Mr. Reese's best friend on the faculty was Mr. Dillon. Mr. Dillon was a journalism teacher, and there are not editors anymore in the same way. So people like to see that they can do anything they want. Like I'm a news source. You're a news source. I think there's been a lot of these things. Were editors bad? Did they gatekeep? Yes, that's what the job of an editor is. Was that sometimes diminishing points of view that are important to hear? Sure, that absolutely was true too. But if you take away the editor, then you kind of lose a sense of what the quality is. And the democratization of all these things has become, you can't tell what voice is a real voice, and that opens the door for technology to be a voice that you have to then do the work of your own vetting. And I'm more of like system two, which is the lazy brain, but I will do the work if I have to. But right now there's so much information that comes at you. You have to be very cautious about what you vet. And it takes a lot of work.
Do you think it's fair to say that many people are just letting algorithms be their editor now?
Yeah. I think that's exactly what's happened.
I think a big problem with the information landscape too is that I mean, I think we've always been susceptible to confirmation bias, but now it's just so much easier to listen to somebody. I know this of myself. I can't stand listening to people that I disagree with, right? It's like I get a physiological response sometimes, my heart rate goes up, I get a little bit hot, and I start talking to myself, yelling at the screen. And so it's so much easier nowadays because there's so many options, right? That we can just change the channel, as it were, and listen to somebody that we agree with. And I think that is a big part of the problem too, is that this information landscape is making confirmation bias easier than ever.
Mm.
I think that's very true, and I think that the antidote for that is when you can, it is to pause when you're feeling those feelings come up in you, those kind of tribal feelings, like I can't listen to this other person. And instead, I think I'm more naturally curious than the average person, so I always find that sometimes I find it maddening, but other times I'm like, I wonder what the story is behind where that person came from and how their point of view evolved over time and what it really means to them and where they're at. And that, if you look at it, that's what the tools are that people use to try to bridge the gap and find some area of common ground. It's kind of reestablishing one tribe instead of like, oh, we're split apart into two massive tribes and a bunch of other splinter groups,
Josh, you have been a coach for quite a few leaders, some of them in charge of big things and big companies. When I think about what you've said about critical thinking in terms of leadership and slowing down and considering other stories, do you have any stories or themes that come up for you with leadership that you think happens a lot to leaders, that where they're not slowing down, or where critical thinking really could be enhanced these days with leaders? Does that come up for you?
Yeah. One person who I worked with ran a group that was seeking to bring more businesses. They would bring over like startups from another country and try to foster trade between the U.S. and this other country. And what was interesting talking to him, he was the CEO, was that the idea that there should be or could be of skeptical voices in the room was not the way he worked, not the way he thought it should work, not the way anybody in this organization worked. So I think one of the things that was very valuable that he told me later was I went in and I gave actually a talk at the organization about the power of having a skeptic and having someone who looks at things and tries to look outside the light and illuminate those things, right? Like that's a really important thing to look at. Like one of the things, going back to the Renee Good thing, well, when someone's been involved in a shooting, typically in a police force or a law agency, they have to undergo an exam with a psychologist or a psychiatrist to be pronounced fit for duty again after they've been off. Do we know if that happened? I've read a lot about that thing. I don't know anything about it because they're kind of keeping that information locked up. But there's a lot of process issues that could have contributed to what happened there that I don't think anybody's really thinking about. That's like way outside the light that I just know because I used to do that sometimes when I was a psychiatrist. So having voices from underneath, like in terms of what a good follower is they should be bringing up, and they should be welcomed and should feel safe enough to bring in these other opinions and other thoughts and other perspectives. And are we thinking about X? Are we thinking about Y? If a leader isn't welcoming that or wanting that, that's a real problem. It just promotes, a bunch of groupthink, and then you're not really getting the most you can out of all the brain power that's in your organization.
That's really interesting that there's a resistance these days in business for that sort of position, the skeptic. I was made to think about the devil's advocate position, which the Catholic Church, for I don't know how long, centuries, I guess, whenever they would beatify or try and turn somebody into a saint, they would have somebody come in, literally the devil's advocate, who would argue against sainthood for this man or this woman. And so even back then, among the religious establishment, there was this notion of, we got to hear from the other side, otherwise this doesn't count or something. So it's interesting to hear that sort of has been lost in a way. And I guess that, it's the kind of corporate mentality, I guess, just to drive for profit, and that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, people are sensitive too. In my experience, if you have not established a culture of how teamwork and brainstorming and any sorts of outside ideas work, if someone comes in to do a presentation and they're just expecting these are the ideas instead of inviting, and then if they get any sort of feedback, critical or not, it sort of deflates everything. The culture is not right somehow. If that's the culture you want to create, is like, okay, yes, you did a great job bringing these ideas, and then we're all going to work on them. It has to be something where you have enough humility to handle that with, if you're the one spearheading that project, that CEO. I mean, I'm curious if, like, once you've done that and you say, oh, this is a necessary position for, success, and this makes you, stronger or whatever. I wonder if someone like that, if they think of it as like, okay, now we have the skeptic come in and the skeptic will do their work, if that actually could switch it for people that are like really into, I'm the boss and everything I do is right.
Yeah, because I think a lot of it is about, it isn't just the pursuit of profit. For a lot of people, if they're a leader at work, they are getting other things than money, right? There's an emotional aspect of that for each person. It's going to be different. So some people are more wired to, there's kind of two schools of manager. One is like, I know best, to do it my way. And the other one is like, how can we make you your best? And there's a wide variety between that. Those are kind of the two poles, though. So the people who are more like trying to get the most out of the individuals they work with and figure out what are Doug's unique strengths and what are Carrie's, and let's figure out how we work together as a team. And let Doug go off on that crazy, nerdy Dewey Decimal System analogy to get him to a solution for this problem. And let Carrie go off about how, like, dancing is really the way that you'd figure out this problem. If we just did some, group dance, we would get there.
Or spreadsheets.
Or spreadsheets. I know she likes spreadsheets.
Dance and spreadsheets somehow are the two things. Douglas and I, he saw his first modern dance show the other night.
I did.
My mom bought us tickets. We saw it in San Diego. Did it blow your mind?
It did. It was great. I loved it.
It was like the most acrobatic, athletic company I'd ever seen in my life, and I've seen a lot. So I was like, well, of course he's going to see this show.
But then can we talk about the critical thinking that people did about that kind of stuff? That's crazy to me. See, that's where...
Oh, my gosh. You have to tell this story actually now.
That's where I depart. So I knew that I was going to see this dance show with two former professional dancers.
And if anybody wants to know the company, it was Hervé Kubi, right?
Yeah, so big name.
They're from Europe.
Apparently, French.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I tapped into my ChatGPT account and I said, Chat, I'm going to this modern dance show with two professional dancers. Give me some things to say that sound like I know what I'm talking about. Some snooty, over-the-top, erudite kind of things. And, it did not disappoint. So I came ready, and I was well prepared for, I'm really curious to see how the dancers tonight work with negative space. Modern work lives and dies there. Stuff like that.
So you asked AI to do critical thinking for you.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good transition, actually.
Yeah.
So that obviously, that example is rather tongue-in-cheek, not very serious. I was just trying to get a laugh, and I did.
The deepest critical thinking you had of that dance show was like, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah. I mean, it was physically impressive.
Yeah.
But it feels like every decade is a brave new world with some sort of new technology or device, right? Smartphones, social media, well, the internet, going back even further. And now, of course, it's AI.
Mostly large language models is what we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And, I work in academia, but I also, in the library, and I work with all kinds of folks, though. So, UCLA Health and archaeology or architecture or English or what have you. And there's a very different sort of attitude towards AI, depending on who you talk about in academia, with obvious reasons, right? In the case of health sciences, the possibilities are almost limitless. They might even be, life-changing for many, many people. And so there's a much more positive view of AI and the benefits of it. You talk to, English or history professors, and I think they might have a different opinion about AI and how that's affecting their students. Has AI come into your professional life or personal life at all, Josh? And how do you think it has changed the critical thinking landscape, or is changing, I should say, because it's certainly not done. How do you think that's changing?
Hold on, let me get tissues, because whatever he says, I'm probably going to start weeping because it's so bad.
Oh, God. Okay.
I'm of a mixed mindset on it. I think that large language models largely are a bad system one way of thinking. They
Can I just interrupt real quick, and can you define system one and system two thinking? Because you've mentioned system two before.
Oh,
Can
sure.
you just...
Sorry with that. So system one is sort of the emotionally driven. It's more right-brained. It's intuitive and it's fast. So it's jumping to conclusions based on the data set that we have in our heads from our lived experience. And those are helpful heuristics a lot of the time, but they're subject to anchoring bias, availability bias, anchoring like the first thing I heard, or that's why, like, if you're negotiating a salary, the first number, you want to make it high. If you're negotiating what you want to pay for something, the first number, make it low. Availability is like that I can't remember the woman's name because it was 1990 or 91 at that apartment, but whatever her bias was, it could have been actually that the last two guys who came in were gay. So she's just thinking high probability of gay guys looking for apartments here in San Francisco in June, right? So
Yeah.
who knows?
So system one, Josh is gay. System two, Josh is not gay. Is that about
System
right?
two, yeah, system two would involve maybe asking a question.
Okay.
Like, are you guys together?
Right.
Is a gym important for you? I'd like to really emphasize the gym to make sure I get you to sign this lease. Come to think of it, she did show us the gym first. There was also a pool. It was nice. It was a nice building. System two is the lazier part of the brain that iteratively goes at and solves problems. So system two is what you're engaging when you're writing that 10-page thesis that's going to get you your final exam, that right now you could also just ask ChatGPT to do. And the problem with it for me is that it doesn't lead to developing and doing that hard work. It's as if instead of going to the gym, you're like, can I get like some supplemental muscle implants and a spray tan? I guess you don't get a tan at the gym, but you know what I mean? Like, it's taking the shortcut rather than doing the hard work. And it will eventually make us dumber if we're not using it in a way that actively tries to engage the parts of our brain that need to learn and figure out how do you think and build a good argument and critically assess what's going on. So I view it as for language, if you're a writer, it's like the worst thing because writing is hard work. Writing something that is either a thoughtful, persuasive essay or writing something that's creative is hard work. Having AI generate it isn't doing the work. that you need to really build the muscle.
Yeah, it's kind of like being, just being told what the answer is in a math problem. Oh, that's 23. Just write that down.
Yeah.
Right.
The critical thinking stuff in terms of kids and their development of coming up against something tough. And we keep seeing, research and news that younger generations perhaps are not equipped to deal with things that are hard or that they disagree with, perhaps. And, there's a lot about the process of getting to solve a problem and going through all the little barriers that, it definitely feels like part of it. So that side, I'm like 1,000% there. And then there's like this other side, which you had said that you have mixed feelings about. And I'm sure this comes up too. Like when you think about like a small business owner, and in the past, let's take sales tax actually as a good example, because this is a world I have been dealing with for the last 18 months. And, sales tax is already incredibly complicated, but with the modern world the way it is, and with e-commerce the way it is, and with all the different 50 states the way they are, and with everything being more and more and more complicated, the burden, tariffs, oh my gosh, and shipping, all that stuff, the burden on a small company to be able to do certain things or learn them or solve that problem when it needs to be 1 hour of my day, not my whole day. That's where sometimes these tools are such a miracle, right? And it's like sometimes I don't know the difference between where it's a miracle and where it's probably not good for me.
I would argue, unless you're trying to be an accountant or a tax consultant, like it's fine to kind of do the workaround. I've used it to tackle complex technical problems and setting up web servers and AWS and stuff that I don't really want to have to learn. So, but then that's the danger, right? You don't want to have to learn. It's a slippery slope. Yeah. And I think it's in particular dangerous for the younger generation, the generation before us, millennials, Gen Z and younger, that have basically grown up with answers. Some form of answer right there on the screen. Maybe not AI in school per se, but Google, which effectively was in some ways the cheat password.
I wonder, I know, and are we being sort of biased towards, ourselves because we're older? Josh, do you have any thoughts about like the not wanting to learn thing or the resistance? Like, I've learned all I need to learn at this point, so AI can help me once I'm 35 or whatever we're saying, the simplistic way of saying that. Like when I think of my mom, who is constantly still learning and solving problems, and like, the dance world, they've come to find certain cool things about people who challenge their brains to learn new and memorize new dance and connect those synapses in their brain older in their life. And it's actually different than like free dancing, where you just get to do whatever you want. It's having to actually crunch the choreography and learn the thing and do the thing. Maybe we're being a little bit unfair because we're saying like, once you get to a certain age, then you can use AI.
Well, I think everybody will wind up using it for certain things, but I would say that bringing this back to like critical thought and how to use AI critically is to assess like, well, how do I know this is right? Right? I'm not saying it hallucinates on everything, and I think that for a lot of things you don't have to know if you can plug it right in, like the programming example. But even then, when they're doing this with programming, it's right under certain conditions, right? So a lot of that early vibe coding stuff breaks down as soon as you're bringing more traffic into the system, because the code is not written in the inefficient way. It's written for a different use case, and there's problems with it. So when using AI, you have to think like, how do I know it's right, and what's at stake, right? Would you trust AI if you had to send your 8-year-old child? I know you guys don't have an 8-year-old child right now, but if you did, and you had to send your child across the country, would you plan that whole trip using AI?
Mm-hmm. No.
Right now, I don't think a lot of people would, but I think some people are pretty stinking close. They trust it for a lot right now.
Yeah.
That's what you have to look at critically, though. It's like, are the stakes right for me to use this tool to do this thing? Mm-hmm. Would you travel right now in an airplane that had been designed by AI, a large language model AI? which has no understanding of the physical world whatsoever and currently cannot label the parts of a bicycle correctly.
Yeah.
I would not.
Have you, Josh, heard or read the book The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt?
I've only heard of it and read the excerpt that he had in the Atlantic or the New wherever I read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about it a lot in the context of screens and AI and just really how we are depriving children of the chance to become fully formed adults, social animals. It isn't that we're giving them tools and an advantage. It's really that we're depriving them of the opportunity to learn and navigate kind of social interactions and critical thinking problems and all kinds of things. So yeah, I think it's an important topic to keep bringing up in the world these days.
Yeah. Well, Josh, if you were to leave our listeners with one key thing that you wish they knew or would do in this world of decaying critical thinking, what would you tell them, or what would you want them to do?
I think I would want them to commit to trying to look where the light is not, as they're trying to understand what is happening in the world around them or with the person who they are talking to, and to try to do their best to slow down their system one and spend a little more time in system two and ask more questions and eat a healthy diet. And I think it's important to get good sleep.
Exercise.
Oh my gosh.
Exercise and, don't worry about whether you have your shoes on in the house or outside the house. Like it's okay.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you for being on. I hope this isn't the last time.
Thank you, Josh.
You guys, this has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed the however long we spent. It feels like it flew right by. So really appreciate the thoughtful questions and indulging the theories of mine that I expressed on the show.
Yes. No, these are wonderful people fussy theories. I think they're great. So until the next time, thank you so much. Thanks for fussing with us, Josh.
My pleasure.
Bye, Josh.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, Josh.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of People Fuss. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and of course, fuss around in the comment section on YouTube.
People Fuss is a tight-knit production written and produced by yours truly, Carrie Prince.
And Doug Daniels.
If you want to support conversations that create connection and promote progressive and human-centered stories, visit patreon.com/peoplefuss and become one of our monthly supporters. Or you could even just throw us a one-time donation.
Or you could throw us a 10-time donation. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as our cats enjoyed annoying us from behind that closed door.
Such whiners. All right. Until the next one.
Bye.
Bye.